right, looks like it worked. Okay. I don't see anybody in here yet, but I'll just go ahead and start talking. All right, we got some people joining. So, this is Book Talk on BookTalk, where we talk. In theory, I can do that. And we have our executive producer, Tanya. She's here. She's Celtic Blue to you, and she'll be in the comments moderating, and she does all the scheduling, and I'm not sure what on earth it would be like to try to do this without her. So for those of you rolling in, hopefully you see an intro. I've learned how to do that for us here on Book Talk, and just saying that we all want to be have fun in here, let people know what we're talking about, because we've had some people who ask what it is that we're talking about whenever they come in about halfway through. So hopefully that helps rectify that. All right, and we have our first guest. I'm going to invite him, and that is J. Michael Knight, and he's a fantasy author, and we are so glad that he's going to be here to join us. We're also going to have author Jen Hauser, and then Troy and narrator Troy Duran. All right, and here comes Mr. Knight.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, we can hear you anyway. So that's
okay. Let me see how to do the video. Oh wait.
And while he's working on that, I'll say that Jen Hauser, who was with us previously, and she had to leave a little early. She's replacing Allie Dane, narrator Allie Dane, who is very sorry that she could not make it tonight, but we are working on rescheduling her. And she loves everybody, and for everyone who came to see her, especially. But she will be back with us. We just have to get her rescheduled. And man, that is some awesome hair, dude. That is great.
Yeah.
How long have you been working on that?
About 2.5 years now.
Whew.
Yeah, COVID hit, and I just said, let's just see what it looks like. And now I get too many compliments on it, so I'm just going with it.
There you go. See, I tried to do that with my beard, and you can see one spot there. It doesn't grow.
Yeah, I got it. So I got a couple.
I couldn't get it to where I liked it, so now I try to keep it trimmed up. Although sometimes if I know I'm not having to, before we started the show, if I was going to have to go months without public appearances or anything like that, I might let it grow out a little bit more. And I also, before we get started with the questions and stuff, I wanted to say that one new thing that I've done is, I'm not sure if everybody who's over 1,000 can do this now or not, but there is a subscription. You can subscribe to our live streams, and I activated that mostly because I knew I didn't have any, and I wanted to play around and look at all the features that you can do with live, which you can't do unless you are, in fact, live. So I went ahead and did that. It's up here, and it's 0 out of 10 stars. So if you feel like subscribing, I think it's like $6, and I can do subscriber only live, so maybe I'll read from what I'm working on. I can answer one-on-one questions. I can't sing for you because apparently you cannot have music, which is weird, and why it would only pertain to subscriber only lives versus ones like this that are open to the public. But anyhow, that is up there, and it'll continue to be up there because I'm not going to research how to take it off. And plus, if I get enough people, then we can actually probably have some interactive fun and do some more one-on-one things. Let's see.
Do you know how to share this to my followers, or a quick way to do it?
I think you have to go down. There should be a little arrow that says share.
Share, yeah.
At the bottom, and so yeah, you can. I think you have to click one at a time up to 15.
One at a time. Okay, that's what I was. Okay.
And there's Jen. She has joined us. Hello, Jen. How are you?
Hi. Good. I'm all charged on my phone, so I shouldn't just go disappearing this time.
You say that, and I'm gonna duck out of the frame real quick to plug mine in because I forgot to do it. I was a little bit rushed today.
I'm at 60, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, that'll be all right. It's this is kind of a watch what happens live situation. Stuff's gonna happen, and let me see if I can put in my ear pods and if that'll work.
Yeah, and if you hear pitter patter or barking, there's no safe place in the house. I have 4 dogs, so if I locked the door, they would just be scratching at it. And
this is just us.
So anyway, I was a little bit rushed because I had a work call that was scheduled a little later than normal. Started at 6, so is really yeah. Coach Atlas in the comments is actually my boss, Charles D'Amico, and so yeah, he's commenting on the screen I have back there. So the way we have our apartment set up with me and my roommate is that the desk is out in like where a dining room would be, and so that's kind of, I make that my little office, and so if she walks in, she kind of knows what's going on.
Gotcha.
We get a lot of people saying hi in the comments. Hello to everyone. Sorry if they're scrolling by so fast that I can't.
Yeah, it's hard to see. It's a tiny little.
Right. Yeah, and then we also are gonna have. There he is. Troy Duran. I have invited him. So there we go. Now he's about to join us, and he's going to be our 4th today.
Hey, how do I? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I had the same problem.
Oh, really? Okay. Hold on a second. What do I do? Let's see.
It's a little icon on the top left.
Yeah, there's a little camera. Click save, and then there's a little camera on the top left.
For sure.
And like that's part of the problem with going live, right? Is that you don't know where everything is until you are live.
Until
you're doing this while it's happening. But it's
I asked Tanya.
It's a little fun. Yeah.
So okay, so like I'm looking. I see Rick, you handsome devil. But if I'm afraid if I click on you, I'm going to click out of this thing. I see a star.
It should be a little camera icon, like a white camera icon.
Yeah.
So, oh wait, there's a camera. Hey, look. Hold on a sec here. Let me see if that's it.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Nailed it.
Oh man, you know what? I don't know what the deal. Hold on, let me turn down my on. Yeah. Here's an issue that I've always had. Maybe that's better. So one of the issues I've always had is that everybody else looks healthy, and I look like the living. What is that? The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah. Well, we talk about it on here sometimes, especially as it pertains to voices, but we all perceive ourselves visually and auditorily, if that's a word. Almost in the worst light of ourselves. A lot of us who are creatives like that. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with self-confidence. It's just it's an interesting perception thing. So like I have said on here constantly that I do not love the sound of my own voice. When I was a reporter and I would transcribe interviews, just hated it. Fast forwarded through my questions if it was a long one. But then no one's ever told me, man, your voice is just, I'm not sure why you even bother talking. So it's obviously something that's happening up in there. And yeah, I think a lot of us have a little bit of body dysmorphia and that type of thing. It's it just kind of comes with the territory. But when you are on camera or you are speaking, yeah, that kind of stuff can get enhanced. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was because I am camera shy. I have never enjoyed talking into a box and then seeing my face back at me.
Oh, that's cool. So so this is kind of like therapy for you.
Yeah. Well, and I started
immersion.
Immersion therapy.
Yeah.
Little by little.
Yeah.
And I was doing it. I was doing live Zooms for a while, and then we kind of put a pause on that for work. And I thought, well, I want to keep that muscle exercise, right? I want to keep coming on here so that I don't fall back into where I just kind of start, my heart starts racing, before I go on because I'm nervous. And so doing this once a week has really helped. And so, hopefully for some of the other folks who come on and join me, hopefully that kind of happens too. And the great thing is that the BookTalk community is so great. I have never on social media experienced anything where you have a community that is this supportive of each other. Because Twitter was where I lived for a long time, and it just and I haven't been on there in a month. And then Instagram,
It's like,
yeah. And Instagram is not very interactive, right? Even if you go likes for likes on your videos, TikTok versus Instagram, even if they're similar, at least in my experience, you do not get nearly as many likes, nearly as many comments and interactions. So I think whether I chose TikTok or TikTok chose me, this seems to be who won in the social media wars that are brewing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It really is interesting to see how people are interacting. It seems like TikTok is just so active with when you start doing TikToks, especially like Rick with I had to get to know you when Tanya had talked to me about joining you. I said, okay, cool. Yeah, let me get to know Rick. And so I looked at your TikToks, and I thought it was so cool because you had like a new question every day, and you probably got a ton of response, and as you went along, just more and more. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it just naturally lends itself to that.
Well, and y'all can jump in if you found this to be true too. But being your authentic self on TikTok is really whenever people start gravitating towards you and start interacting. So I went back to my journalism background and said, what's easy for me? What am I good at? And being a reporter, it was asking interesting questions, and then when people comment, reacting to that. So I said, well, let me just try that and see what happens. And then, of course, there was part of me that knew that if I asked questions, people wanted to answer. That's an automatic engagement. But what has worked for you guys? In terms of what you're having fun with posting videos on TikTok.
I can go. I pretty much my wife told me to just, because I'm always nervous about what I put on there, and I go, should I put this? Should I do that? I'm kind of weird and goofy, so I come up with ridiculous things. And sometimes I'll send it to my brother or my wife, and I go, is this too weird? Are people going to get this? And then she always just goes, she says, there's so many people that just post the stupidest, most random crap. And if you just keep doing it and you keep showing that no matter what, you're just going to keep putting stuff out there, eventually that, if it's not horrible, people will come. So I've kind of just been like, whatever I decide today. Like today I woke up and I saw a TikTok that had the gingerbread man scene from Shrek with the gumdrop buttons, and I can do the gingerbread man voice. So I went, and they were mouth syncing it, and I went, you know what? I'm going to remake this video, and I'm going to do the voices myself.
Oh, nice.
And I put it out there. So it's just whatever I feel like doing. I like what you do, where you just ask a question, and it's kind of, mine's just more random and chaos.
I'm all for the chaos. That's how I am. I cannot be coordinated enough to have a good strategy. So.
Yeah, my problem is that I'm so busy with my 9-to-5 stuff, reading, that it's hard for me. Like there are these times that I'll stop and I'll think, oh, that would have been funny for TikTok, but it's like I got a million things to do, so I'm not. I need to be better about that and just kind of try to engage more, because it's fairly easy for me. I mean, I could just, as long as I have permission from the author, I can just read a part of a book. And I think that for whatever reason, people like to hear me screw up as much as they like to hear the actual audio.
I love that.
Those are some of the best narrator videos, honestly.
Behind the scenes stuff is really cool. And authors, we don't really get to do that. I guess some people go on live and they do just kind of write and hear each other tapping the keys, but it's definitely not as visually or orally as interesting as the voice narrators, and hearing them stop and go, oh, I didn't like that, and outtakes like that are always so great. And so we're supposed to be talking about books. I know we got started on some interesting stuff, but I wanted to give. Oh, so that was Charles. That's my boss. We live here in Amarillo, and that was Prairie Dog. Or you can call it a sod poodle. because that is our minor league team here in town, the Amarillo Sod Poodles. That is an
The
old
Sawtoodles?
Interesting.
sod
Sod.
poodle.
Oh,
So
the
sod is in grass, and then poodle
It's in
as in
Sod Poodles.
like
Oh,
a
that's
dog.
funny. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
funny.
Apparently, someone heard that along the way. We did, and this was several years ago. The city of Amarillo did a name our team contest, and that was
Mhm.
one of the ones people put in there, and
That's
it
funny.
ended up winning. And that's such a minor league name, right? And like they
Oh,
had to
yeah.
explain what it was, and they found like the etymology from like the 1800s, and who knows if it was even true, but it was too good of a story for us to check out. And I was working in the
Wow.
newspaper where that's our
That's kind
job,
of
but
cool. Yeah, I
but
was.
anyway, yeah, it's just such a perfect minor league team name, and we
Mhm.
really like it. We call them the Saudis for short.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I want our two authors, Jen and Jay, to talk about their latest release. Before I forget, what should people be out there looking for to
You can
buy?
go for ladies first.
Which, by the way, my handle, you have to wait 30 days between changing them. And now that the drama of Trolls is over, I get to change it back tomorrow, so it will
Oh,
actually
good.
look like I'm an author again.
All right.
Oh, I guess that there's a story bit in there, huh?
Yeah, what happened? I didn't hear the story. I'm missing out.
I mentioned on the last live, there was the whole piracy thing going around. There
Okay.
was a book talker who made a video supporting authors, and then a troll made a video about her, and it went viral, almost 1 million views. She was getting death threats, so I made a video being like, "Yo, not worth death threats," and then that person made a video about me, so kind of went silent because
there
not
are people
only
who are okay with piracy. They're like defending
oh,
piracy.
it's a very deep conversation. Yes,
Wow. Oh, it's
yes.
ridiculous. Yeah.
But anyway, it was just one of those things where I was like, I don't want death threats. Also, I don't want people going and blasting all of my books with 1 stars when I'm struggling to get reviews, period. So
Yeah.
I kind of
Well,
changed everything.
Gotcha.
Anyway, my latest release. I brought the book this time since I didn't have it, and Tanya scolded me. I'm just kidding. She didn't scold me. So it's actually my book journal. So mostly I publish romantic fantasy or fantasy romance. Like that's my debut. I've got
nice.
5 books plus a couple bonus out in that series. But this is just a book journal. Figured out how to do the fancy
that's
edges.
cool.
That's really cool.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so she wanted me to show.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a print or a quote from a local printer because sometimes the print on demand indie publisher printers don't do a perfect job of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would more than double the cost. So that was depressing. But
Wow.
got a fancy underneath.
No, it's really pretty.
Yeah.
And just a few minutes ago, I was, in the middle of writing another fantasy romance with a dark-haired tattooed love interest. So
Really?
you should feel appreciated that I walked away from that glorious.
We're
Yeah,
honored.
sounds pretty
We're
hot.
certainly honored.
Hey, so let me ask you guys a question. Since I've got 3 authors in the room, I thought this would be a pretty cool opportunity.
But
to have some of my
before you do
favorite-
that, Troy, before you do that,
Mhm.
Jay, what's your latest book that people need to look for out there?
So Tanya's going to be mad at me because I actually gave away I had somebody who wanted my last print copy of Ocean's Edge, which is my latest. That is my entry into the fantasy romance genre. But my first book, I can grab it, is The Source of Death.
Wow.
And it's a young adult fantasy. And I've had it in my head for about 10 years. I wanted to write a story about a kid, like a psychic vampire who just sucks the life out of everybody around him and doesn't really know why. And that's kind of how the story came to be. Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's cool.
And then Ocean's Edge is the first story ever to star a vampire mermaid princess. I looked, there's nothing, not all 3 of those. You can find 2 of them, but all 3 of them doesn't happen.
Well, for now.
And that happened because my dental assistant said that she wanted to be a part of the story, my first book. And I said, well, what? And she said, I want to be a vampire mermaid princess. I told her I can't, I can't swing that in this book. So instead, I made her a cleaning fairy, a tiny cleaning fairy. But she's got a huge role in the story, but she was cool with it. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to make a whole brand new story revolving around a vampire mermaid princess, which was very difficult to work out on how is she on land? How do they talk to people? How do, etc. But yeah, so, and then that spawned this whole series.
I always thought that like mermaids have always had this reputation of being really sweet and a little guileless and innocent and therefore maybe defenseless. But I've always felt like mermaids are like there's some danger behind those behind those.
Oh, she's a badass. All my characters, especially female characters, are just as tough. She's actually tougher, I think, than because. Realistically, I was like, to swing a trident in the ocean takes way more strength than it does to do in the air. So when she got turned into a vampire, I made her physically stronger than Alex, who's just a regular human who got turned into a vampire. But he's got some tricks up his sleeve. And so no, she's a badass. The mermaids are pretty fierce in my story. They're psychic. But only they talk to each other because that's how they communicate under the ocean. And then they don't let the other races know that that's how they communicate. So they read other people's minds and keep it a secret. So Alex kind of finds out. And then with that, when he turns her into a vampire, the psychicness kind of goes with him. And then they have like a link, together. And then that's their romance story. So
nice.
That's awesome.
Mermaids and sirens are they related?
I have also one of the main characters in the book is a siren. He's a male siren. I thought about making them kind of related. Instead, I decided to go that sirens are kind of rock stars that like to sing and mesmerize people with their voices, and then they kind of feed off that adoration.
Wow, that's cool.
So,
nice.
That's very cool.
See, I write crime fiction, which we deal mostly in the real world, or one of my novels is speculative, so there's it's what might happen 10 years from now or something like that. The imagination that y'all have, that y'all do fantasy, I admire that every time I hear you all talk about your worlds, because my world building is mostly just backstory for characters.
I feel like yours is tougher though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean,
I feel like
no,
tougher,
right?
so,
like,
well, we can all be in the mutual admiration society, I feel like, and it's because world building like that is not something that I'm strong at. So that's probably why I'm like, what would I even do if I wanted to start doing that? But then I know some people tell me like to try to imagine ways for people to die and to come up with clues and plant them and have it all.
That's tougher for me.
And like, that is its own art, and I think a lot of it depends on what you read, right? Because for most people, what they read is what they write, with some notable exceptions. Charles in the comment is one of them. But yeah, like, so every time I love hearing you guys talk about your world building and the different creatures that inhabit your worlds, because that stuff just fascinates the heck out of me. I did want to say real quick before we do more questions, thank you, Colleen. She sent us a whole bunch of roses, and she is she's my boss's wife, so she's joining us for the first time, I believe. And so, hi, Colleen, and everyone who sent likes. We've got almost 1,000, and I know that those help us get more visibility in the
algorithms
live world, so we can have more people watching us. And some folks, we all saw that prairie dog pop up, those gifs. Thank you all so much. We're all content creators on here, and any tips like that are always super duper welcome. If I know that we have a few huge names that are on TikTok, like Brandon Sanderson and John Green, but most of us on here definitely work for a living, so we'll take all of that stuff we can get. So thank you to everyone. We love that. And then Troy, it sounded like you had a question for us authors.
Oh yeah. Okay. So okay, here's a couple. Well, all right. One is a question to authors, but then there's another question that I had when I woke up early yesterday. But so when you it's kind of it's interesting to me how authors seem to have these stories that kind of percolates, like you had mentioned, Jay. You said, oh yeah, I've been thinking about this story for the last 10 years or so. It seems like you've always got like several stories and plot lines and characters and things like that just kind of sit there for a good period of time, and then you don't, it doesn't seem like you can really force that. You have to kind of, I don't know, like just like write what's in front of you at the moment, to like whatever characters are saying, hey, I need you to tell my story. Is that the way I mean, it's the thing that I admire about authors is like how you can come up with these ideas, book after book after book, and just stay so active.
I mean, for me, it was just starting to write. Yeah, I
It's
just
just like,
started to write. I had this book and I could have started to write it and I never did. And then finally this year, I just said, what do I have to lose? Like the world seems like it's ending. I might as well write one, get one book out there. And so I just started writing, and then I write. I didn't write any notes. I don't write any notes. I don't put anything down. I just have an idea and I kind of flesh it out in my head and see if I can make it work in my head. And then if it doesn't, then I just leave it. And if it does, then I just start and I write like I'm watching a movie, and then I say to myself, what would I like to see in this movie? And then I write all the scenes and everything that I can imagine, scene by scene as I go. And that's just kind of how I do it.
wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Jen?
I think for me, I didn't start writing like a lot of authors until the pandemic. And my first
Mhm.
ever book, I had actually written down some notes about a dream from years before, where I woke up from such a vivid dream that I was like, that would make such an awesome movie. So I was, I don't know, on a leave of absence, missing
Yeah.
out on a vacation from Costa Rica. Uh, and I decided to just start writing it, and I fell in love, absolutely love. Now that book, it's a sci-fi one. It is a piece of trash that needs massive revision, so who knows when it'll be published. But
Oh yeah, but
it
when you
introduced me to that.
when
Huh?
like you're gonna look back at your, when you have a whole catalog of books that people are writing. I mean, that's gonna be the most interesting that people are gonna
Hmm.
want to look back on and say, what how did she start?
Yeah.
It'll be really
And
cool
someday
to.
it'll probably be like my 50th published by the time I get
Mhm,
around to actually doing revisions, because it's painful every time I go back and try to sort out how to make it better. But my second book that I wrote was my debut. And
mhm.
from then, like, that was literally Jay like talking about like there's no vampire princess mermaids out there. My Seer War series is literally, it was inspired by a dream about dandelions. I made plant people out of
Really
dandelions, thistles, and
interesting.
ivies.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, cool.
And so yeah, it's dreams and a lot of also like what if instead of
Hmm.
getting like the
Hmm.
villain's perspective, we get his daughter's perspective or
Yeah.
something like that. And it just goes from there. And how do we get these ideas? In what order do we write them? It is chaos in here.
You
There are a
just like
thousand book
you
ideas.
do you do the same thing that Jay does, and then just like start writing and say, the characters are going to tell me what happens, or do
For
you
the
chart
most
out?
part, I've started to do a little bit of outlining, nothing more than just one page scratched out on paper.
Hmm.
But it's mostly because I've like hyper focused on them while I'm not able to fall asleep. Like I mentally plot it out because I'm excited to see where these characters go. So it's not that I'm one of those super intentional plotters. Is that what you do, Rick? Is that what
I was
you're?
going to ask Rick, yeah, if that's
Yeah.
you have to do that, don't you?
Well, so it's
I like
for those of us who write in crime fiction, we get to cheat a little bit because we have to deliver certain plot elements, right? Like we have to have a plot that does this, this, and this, and if you can work a good twist in. So a lot of times, we can think about that and do that mentally, and then fill in the characters. Which
Mhm.
there's obviously a discussion to be had: character driven versus plot driven stories. And I've been trying lately to start more with character and then branch out. And that's what I'm doing on my current work
Hmm.
in progress because Number one, that's going to lead to series, which in crime fiction is big. A lot of authors do, make a living writing really good standalones, and I feel like that's probably where I'm going to end up anyway. But if I want to write a series, I'm going to have to come up with a character, a main character that can carry one. And I tried doing that before, didn't quite work out. And then there are people who are great at writing series. Charles down in the comments. He runs our publishing company, Blue Handle, and he's an author, and I think he has 18 or 19 books kind of in the can with 3 different series that we're going to work on and edit and publish. And so, but he also doesn't really plot. He starts with he had this awesome character, and he figured out what he was going to do by writing, exploratory writing, pantsing. And so I'm trying to do that a little more because I was very much focused on the plot, which served me well in one of my books, Let the Guilty Pay. Critics really enjoyed it. Everyone who reads it tells me that they really enjoy it. And a lot of them talk about at least one of the 2 major twists that I have and how I set them up and did all that. But then I went to write a sequel because it was a 2-book contract, and my publisher and I both, when I signed the contract, we wanted me to have a sequel, at least one sequel. And I realized after trying to get that first draft together that, my character was definitely really flawed and was not super heroic, like it was a noir. And so just did not, someone sent me a message, just did not have what it took to carry a series. So we put out the sequel, and, we got it publishable. It's, I'm proud of it. I hope my publisher is, but we definitely had to end the series there. Because I didn't write the right kind of character that could do that. And so with this new work in progress, I've kind of started thinking about rebooting my author career, getting, good representation, trying to get with a bigger publisher, and going that traditional route, because I want to swing for that fence, because, that's just my goal, and it's not everybody's goal, right? And so that's what we talk about a lot when we have the authors on here. And so Ray, who's one of our authors at Blue Handle, asked a good question I can answer. Can you have a subsequent book that's in the series that's from the different characters' perspective? Charles did a spinoff where it's technically a separate series, but it's in the same universe. And none of my characters, one character who's maybe one that could have carried the series, but that's not quite what I wanted to do. And like I said, it was noir, so all my characters were flawed, and the readers were probably done with them after after finishing my book, which is fine, which is what I was going for. That was the kind of book that I wanted to write. But you absolutely
Rick,
can do that.
Do you mind if I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah, go for it.
This is driving me nuts. Let me tell you what happens when, oh my Lord. I got this phone call came in while I was listening to you, and I reached up and I ended the call, but then all of a sudden I got this echo going through my thing, like what you were saying was repeated 5 seconds later.
Oh no!
So I didn't understand a word you were saying. Do you mind if I drop out and then come back in?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me do that because this thing is echoing back in my ear.
Oh, that'd be tough.
Yeah, that would be awful. Yeah, definitely do that.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay. And I had that happen the other day. Something similar where I went to answer a text message, and it turns out that muted everybody, and because I was the host, and it kind of stopped everything. So that's definitely one thing that can happen. Okay, and he. All right, so he's going to come back and join us. So I think if I'm reading this right from Tanya, Jay, one of your books got that Amazon Orange banner and was the #1 in a category.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yeah, for about 2 hours.
And then they took away your category. I saw that.
Yeah,
I've heard that's a problem right now.
It was, my sales were increasing. I think it was I sold, 3 books. Usually I just started, so I've been doing about a book a day. And then for one of the day, other than my family, maybe about 3 or 4, when I first started or whatever. But I sold 3 books, and then 7 books the next day, and then 10, and then 12, and then I sent Amazon, the list of categories, and so they had and my book is fantasy, but it's literally a perfect combination of sci-fi and fantasy. It's got both elements. So it was in sci-fi, I think mystery, sci-fi, and ebook category, and I started at like 200 and something, and then I went down to 136, and then I went to 8, and then I went to 3, and then I was like, wow, and so I did the video, made it to 1, took the snapshots, and then went to sleep, woke up. I was hoping, because I read that if you get a bestseller in a category, you get a tag that says bestseller. I have the pictures. I went to sleep, woke up, didn't have the tag. They took those off of they gave me 3 brand new categories, the farthest ones that I could possibly, where I'm like ranked 7,000th. And then I emailed them, and then they sent an email back like, yeah, categories are great, but, it's not that great of a gauge, about how good you're doing on your book. And, it's due to customer activity. And I wanted to write back and be like, do you mean the customers that bought my book and put it at number 1 in that category? Right. So I don't know what happened after I got taken away. I've plummeted again, and I'm, selling about a book a day. So I don't really, the books I was competing against were the same author, 3 books. They were traditionally published. I don't know if Amazon was like, no, we don't want you to have that spot. Wow. I don't know why. It was pretty upsetting to me. I'm still a little peeved about it. But yeah.
Wow. See, because I've hit that before. Like there's a number 1 in a category, but I don't remember, like there's a specific criteria to be able to keep the banner. Otherwise it does change. There's some fluidity in that, because mine also don't last long, even though I've stayed in the category. I don't remember
they took it completely. I've been in that category for 2 whole months. It's never changed. And then I finally got up to number 1 on it. And then they literally I think it was within a few hours I was taken off of it, and I was like, whatever.
Were you running a promotion, or are you just
I've been promoting on BookBub. I've been doing, I do Amazon campaign ads. I do BookBub ads. I do mailing lists, where I pay $20 and, they'll put my thing on the mailing list for a weekend. So I've been doing all of those to try to get my name out there, which I think that's why I was starting to get something. And then I was hoping with the number 1 or the, at least being in the top 10 or something that would help get the sales. And then now I'm, 7,000th in young adult fantasy. So,
Yeah. That's rough. What I've discovered from Amazon is they'll forget their own rules. They'll take their small print and use it against you. And they'll also not admit to when they are having glitches, which
my Ocean's Edge title was Ocean's apostrophe and sign $sign.
I have one like that too. It's the apostrophe I'm learning, but I don't know how to fix that.
No, that's what it was. It was the apostrophe that ruined it, and I wrote them, and then they're like, yeah, it's an error. It'll be fixed sometime. And then people couldn't even search for my book because that's not how the title appeared in the search bar.
Luckily, mine is like 5th in the series, so that they follow through. But if it's just a standalone or 1st in series,
people were messaging me, I can't find it, and I'm like, just do J. Michael Knight and then find it through there, and then click on it. But yeah, I think they fixed it. But
all right, so we got Troy back. Is your sound working better?
Much better. It was
good.
It was driving me nuts. I have ADD as it is. So like if there's music in the background, I'm like, oh, what am I doing? And like
Rick was offended because he thought everyone would like to hear him twice, and you obviously don't. So.
yeah.
If only my brain could work. It would be so cool. Like if you could put your grocery list together and write a book and maybe like pay your bills at the same time. But that is not me.
Yeah.
So that's great. So if somebody calls you on the telephone while you're like doing a live,
you just have to wait for it to go away.
Don't even answer it. Yeah, because like I hit the X, and it's like that's when everything just went like bonkers.
Yeah. It seems like the app is pretty, like if you're live, you have to stay in that app, and if you mess around with it even a little bit, it just doesn't like that at all. So did you hear what we were talking about how they took Troy's categories away on Amazon?
I did, yeah. That was, I mean, so that was another thing I was going to ask you about was, hey, look,
I
you've got a
like that.
cowboy hat because you're
Yeah, oh
from
yeah, that's
Amarillo.
nice.
Fancy.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, it seems like Amazon just they get to do whatever they want to do, and you can't complain. You just have to kind of deal with it. And it's, I mean, I experience similar things on my end. Like, I have an audio producer who's just he's a genius, and he's such a great audio producer. And, um, he sent in a complaint to
Thank you, Joe.
Amazon because the quality of the audio that comes out in audiobooks is just like so different from what we send them this great audio, and what comes out is like we were in a tin can. And
Hmm.
we invest a lot of money in
Yeah.
equipment.
Audio equipment,
Yeah. And so and they were like, well, we don't recognize your email address, so you don't seem like a real person. So I
Hmm.
reached out to them, and they basically said, well, sounds like your audio must be not coming in at a good rate. You should view our tutorials. It's just so frustrating to deal with this
Yep.
behemoth, they really don't have to care about your livelihood. And it's like,
no.
I don't know, it just doesn't seem like they have any appreciation how important these things are to us, as long as their algorithms are working so that
Yep.
so that they're
Yeah.
maximizing the sales of everything that they
Well,
do.
I mean, that's what confused me because I thought number one, having number one or whatever, the banner would help sell books for
Mhm.
me, which would then sell books for Amazon. So I was like, I don't know why you would take me. I mean, business wise, I was like, I don't know why you're taking me off the category because having me there, obviously people are enjoying the book. I'm getting decent reviews. I don't know why you would take that spot away on my category. But
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Amazon.
yeah,
despite what I write, I don't actually usually believe in conspiracy theories. Like, that's like my last book, Divided States, literally won an award in the conspiracy thriller category. But in
Mhm.
real life, I'm like, you have to really think people are pretty terrible to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's a weird coincidence. I don't know if that
Mhm.
that other author, if he's with a big enough publisher. One thing I do know is that so Madison, our vice president of Blue Handle Publishing, she used to work for Workman Publishing in New York, and they are a really big independent publisher,
Mhm.
basically. So they're not a big five, but they're up on that level. They publish What to Expect When You're Expecting and Water for
Oh, wow.
Elephants. Are their
Mhm.
two big titles, right? And so part of what she did was she worked with Amazon on their books. Like she was one of their account managers. And
Mhm.
so that's how it works when you're at that level. So, I mean, yeah, there's a chance that author went, hey,
I know that's what I thought.
so I don't like this. And boy, I really hope that isn't, boy, I hope that's not how that worked.
I mean, that author had, I think, 500 plus reviews on each of their books. So they weren't a small nothing, author.
Mhm.
So that was my only thing I could think of was
Wow.
maybe their publisher, somebody called and went, hey, we're holding the 1 and 2 spot, here. We don't want this guy coming in and taking it away. So I don't know.
It's
I
possible.
think
I
a
mean,
lot of it.
the thing is, I mean, we do, it's the funny thing is that, you hear, I think that this whole concept of conspiracy theorist is, the what do they call it? Uh, making that a fringe term kind
Mhm.
of, uh, it kind of diminishes the power. I mean, there really is, there are conspiracies, and there are things that happen uh, on purpose, whether it's government or large corporations or even smaller corporations. And so, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that this would happen. I've known other authors who have had other legitimate complaints where they
Yep.
see, so there, I know some best-selling authors who have said, oh yeah, whenever you see, she took me through, her library of books and showed me how Amazon sells against her books with other books. And these are other books that are, that happen to be published by Amazon. And so it's not a coincidence. It's not, you're not crazy. It's, these things really do happen.
Mhm.
And it's just,
Well,
it's just,
Jen, what has your experience been like with Amazon? Any bad tales from the road, or have they been pretty good to you?
No, I wouldn't say they've been good to me. When we look past the quality issues, then there's the fact that they won't tell you who they're price matching to. I had a free promotion. I was getting, hundreds, I think maybe even thousands of downloads. And all of the other competitors, because I published wide, had switched it back to full price. And so had Amazon. So I was like, cool. And any like trailing sales, I would actually make a profit for once.
mhm,
No. Internally, they still had it marked down to zero because they were price matching to an unknown competitor that they would not disclose and pocketing all the money while people who think they're supporting me by paying full price are not in fact supporting me. It was ugly.
yeah.
But I think honestly, like I know there's some foul play, but I also believe that Amazon is a good deal like TikTok,
Mhm,
where they giveth and taketh away things that you do not want. They give
mhm,
us captions that are constantly changing, capitalizing weird things. When you say 7 to 9, they put on their 8:53, and you're like, that's not what I wanted for my
mhm,
captions.
yeah,
They took away the ability for us to pin comments. So even like Troy, if he wants to pin a comment with the name of the book he just narrated, sucks to be you.
mhm,
So it's just
mhm,
like the things that they do, they
yeah,
just it feels like they're throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like
yeah,
you feel like they should be more professional, but they also really suck sometimes.
yeah.
I think unintentionally, and it's hard to know when it's malicious or
One or the
just
other. Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah. On the other hand,
Yeah.
so and I think that those are all very legitimate concerns and complaints. But on the other hand, especially like me, and I think it's the same for you guys. For me, when I first became interested in being a narrator, it was impossible because I lived in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And if you lived in Phoenix, if you didn't live in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, or
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco, you weren't going to be a narrator. You just weren't.
Yeah.
And, there was a very small group of big narrators. And so when ACX came along, an Amazon company, or ACX, an Audible company owned by Amazon, when they came along, that really democratized the entire process of being a narrator. I could post my samples, and Jen, you could say, no, okay, he sounds like he might be good for this character, so I'll hire him. Or maybe we
Yeah.
could do a royalty share or something like that. So, at the same time that I say, yeah, this massive company with their scores of algorithm creators, designed to like maximize their sales, not your sales, their sales, their throughput. They do, but at the same time, I would not be here if it weren't for that. And I think the same thing goes for self-published authors. I mean,
Mhm.
before Amazon, and before, I mean, maybe not Amazon by themselves, but there was a certain point in time, if you were not writing for one of the big five publishers, you weren't writing, you know
Yeah.
and you were Stephen King, sitting in there, getting rejection after rejection after rejection, until finally, somebody picked you up, and then, it just became a thing. But the process was so much more cumbersome, and the age of dinosaurs where just a select few get to write. Well, today everybody gets to write. You can write. Everybody gets to write. So it's a big sea of writers out there, and some rise up, rise to the top. And Amazon is out there just like gathering everybody, and to them it's like, oh, good, more writers, because they don't care if you sell,
No.
20 copies or 20,000 copies, they're still making money.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I love
Want to
ACX.
say good. Want to
mhm,
sorry about that. I want to say good night to Charles, because he's been generous to us all. So I wanted to say good night, and
Appreciate it.
um, Yes, and thank you, Charles. We appreciate you being here. And definitely, Charles and I, we work through our issues with Amazon for sure. So,
Mhm.
Jay, you were about to say something. I apologize for cutting you
Oh,
off.
I said I just love ACX. Tanya, I said, yeah, I do want to do an Audible book eventually, and then Tanya went,
Mhm.
oh, here's ACX. Why don't you look? And then I started looking at voice actors, and now I'm having both of my books that should be done by the beginning of
Mhm.
January of next year. I should have both books on Audible now. So yeah, no, I love
Yeah.
ACX. It was really nice to be able to look at people's audio samples and go, yep, this person sounds like who I want, and
Mhm.
I took a chance on one person who this is her first book ever, but I really liked her voice, and she's
Mhm.
putting in a lot of effort. And then I got somebody for my other book, has done a few books before.
Mhm.
But I'm really excited. I really like ACX. I didn't know that was a part of Amazon, or that was like an Amazon affiliated company. So
Yeah.
that's good to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really
And then
cool. I mean, I think that's that was just, to me, I was just so, I mean, when I first started narrating books, I mean, I did do it for free. Um, and it was just because I loved the whole idea of being a narrator. And yeah, I mean, it's really cool.
You have a really good voice, so.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, it's been really, really a good thing for me. I mean, I'm kind of one of those, what are they, the decade long overnight sensation. But, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been at it for a good period of time. But yeah, if it wasn't for ACX, I would not have had the opportunity to do it, because I did, I mean, I used to record, um, a piece from an author and send it to them. I would, if I could find their contact information, I would send them information. And one author actually said, "Yeah, I would like for you to narrate my audiobook." And I don't know. Do you know Suzanne Brockman? She writes.
I know the name.
I'm
Yeah, she
terrible.
writes.
I'm terrible at names. I probably know them if I saw them, but I'm
Yeah,
I
terrible
can't
at
think
names.
of any books, but I know the name.
yeah. So she actually said, "Yeah, I would like you to read to narrate my book." And I was like, "Score! I'm here." And then a week later, she called and said, "Yeah, you know what? My publisher said that's not what they do. They've got a team in San Francisco that records all their audiobooks, so we won't be able to do it." So
Hmm.
it's it was really cool to just be able to read for different authors, and like hone my craft and
Oh
uh
yeah, for
and
sure.
do that. So it was pretty cool. Hey, I've
What's
got a really
hey?
quick question for you guys before it escapes my brain, that I wanted to ask you. I have, like, I was thinking about this. I had a talk with some, so I was messaging a friend who is also an author, and um, I said something like we were joking around, and I said, "Jody Verrill, you lunkhead," and I said, $50 if you can name that reference. And she wrote back immediately. She goes, um, "Well, I don't know, but unless you're talking about Jordy Verrill, from Creepshow, she like named the Stephen King character in Creepshow the movie, and the actual character. She said, I'm a Stephen King stan." And I was
Hmm.
like, I was so impressed. I thought, man, that was so cool. So yesterday morning, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning for whatever reason. I couldn't go back to sleep. And that was one of the thoughts I had. And as I was thinking about being on with you, Rick, today, I thought, there are some books that have resonated with me, um, certain scenes, so deeply that I remember them to this very day. And I'm wondering if I'm just kind of a weird duck, and
Oh
that's
no.
just like me. But I mean, I've got like certain, like
Yeah.
Stephen King, for example, there was a scene in Salem's Lot where, you know, the baby died, and it was because of the vampires. But I mean, I read that book when I was 9, and I'm 57, and I still remember that scene. Do you guys have scenes from books that you've read that like just stayed
Yeah.
with you?
Jen, go ahead, and why don't you go ahead and answer that one first?
So the first book that I got was A Spell for Chameleon.
I actually said Jen.
That's
Oh, I think
okay.
you said
No,
Jay.
it's
My
okay.
bad.
I've
Go
done
ahead.
Yeah,
it
no,
before.
No,
I didn't realize how confusing that might be until just now, whenever that
I
happened.
thought it said Jay. My bad. No, she can go ahead.
No,
The
no. Go ahead.
jury is
I have to think about it, honestly.
Oh, yeah. So, back in the day when they had those, penny saver book ads, like I forgot,
Oh
it was like
yeah.
Scholastic, those
Mhm.
Scholastic paper, magazine ads that you get at school. And for 25
Mhm.
cents or something, you could get a 5 books or something like
Oh, I
that.
loved that. Yeah.
So I got A Spell for Chameleon, which is still probably my favorite book because it got me into reading. And I was around 10 years old.
Mhm.
I can't think of the name of the author because I told you I'm terrible.
God, that was like
uh,
Christmas when you would get that book order in,
mhm.
and like you had all these books, and it was like, I got to go home.
And there's all these creatures, in the books, unicorn or what's the one that's like the lion with the scorpion tail and the, like the mythological creature, like
Hmm.
the head of a lion, the tail of a scorpion. Anyway, there's all these mythical creatures that everybody knows what they are. Harpies, birds mixed
Oh,
with,
Griffin, a
people or
Griffin.
whatever. Yeah. And so the gist of the reason why all of that was happening was because these people, this whole community was locked into a magical sphere.
Mm.
And it was all because of inbreeding, that they had these like magical fountains that like produced love. So like a
Really?
horse would drink out of it, and then like a bird would drink out of it, and then they were, in a spell, and then they, so all of these
Really?
weird species were just all because of magical inbreeding. And that scene at like
Wow.
10 years old or 12 years old stuck
Mhm.
with me for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
got
think
one, Jen?
that's.
See, I don't know that I'm a typical reader. I've not always been a bookworm. I have,
Mhm.
like I think some of the others here, I have ADHD. Wasn't diagnosed till I was 35, but like sometimes I get hyperfixated as a reader, but other
Mhm.
times not. But I'm also an extremely analytical reader, so I remember a lot of details. But the emotional impact, I don't know, like, you know, more in the girly reading realm, as I am
Mhm.
outnumbered by men. Akatara is huge on here, right? So I've read the series and I'm like, I enjoyed it. Tons of flaws. I can again analytically like pull it apart. But
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people that's like, oh my gosh, it speaks to my soul.
Mhm.
I don't know. I can't
no,
think
I
of a
didn't feel
moment in
that.
a book that
Yeah, I didn't
has
feel
that
that
way.
either. That
There were
was more
some
analytical. Yeah.
series that I did like there were like Dragon Riders of.
Before you say that, Troy, Piers Anthony Jacobs was the author. I'm
Here's
told
Anthony. Yeah.
by I'm told by our
Okay.
wonderful executive producer Tanya.
Yeah.
She came up with that answer, and so thank you very much for that. And I will say the one scene that I have, the one that's appropriate for TikTok, because I don't want to get banned or anything like that. The inappropriate one is from a Stephen King novel, Cujo. So if you've read that, there are several scenes you can, and
The very end.
it's a sex scene. So, but
Oh,
I was young when I read it too. I was probably like 8 or 9 or 10 in that area. So
Mm.
that's probably why that stuck with
I'll
me.
stick with you.
oh, that's funny. Yeah.
But
The
but
same.
the one
I have the same kind of a scene from Jaws.
Oh yeah, there you
Was
go. Yeah,
yeah.
but the one I can talk about is from one of R.L. Stein's Goosebumps books, and I still think about it to this day, and I don't really know why. But it was a book about twins in the mirror, and it was a mirror realm kind of a situation, right? And I haven't looked up the title recently, so I can't remember what it is. But yeah, there's a scene in there whenever it was kind of revealed that the person in the mirror is your evil twin and not your actual reflection. And so that one stays with me. That was one of the first times whenever I read sort of like actual horror, not necessarily King, but like horror that was meant for somebody that's my age, right?
Mirrors, yeah.
So,
Same here for Goosebumps.
Yeah, and so that was one of the first things that like really like, ooh, kind of give me the willies. And so that one has stuck with me. So you're definitely, Troy, not alone in that there are definitely scenes from books, and not books that have been turned into movies, because that's obviously there's different visuals, but books that you remember the scene playing in your head, and like I definitely still every once in a while. And I'm not even when I'm looking in the mirror, just like whenever I'm just kind of daydreaming, that scene pops in there.
Oh man, so Cujo, he's talking about the difference between the movie and the book, and I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't experienced both. I saw the movie before I read the book.
Oh.
And then so I saw the movie, and then I read the book, and like at the end of the book I'm waiting for a different ending. And at the end of that book I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And that was just like that was a hard scene to deal with. But the very first time that I can remember that ever happening was when I was 4 years old, 3 or 4, and I was watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the claymation thing. And
I've got it.
do you remember when the abominable snowman had Rudolph's girlfriend and her family in the cave, and she was going to eat them? He was going to eat them. That really bothered me. I mean, that was like that hit me so hard. I was like,
pretty dark for like a children's Christmas movie.
Yeah, watching stuff that's made for kids as an adult, you get to see a lot more of the humor that's aimed at the adults, because you have to market to the kids, right? But you have to have something for the adults there to watch too, right? And so whenever you start seeing that stuff, you're like, oh wow, this is being shown to kids, but it flies over their heads.
The kids didn't get it.
Watch it the first time, and they don't get it, and they don't care. But some of those stuff that's aimed at kids, if you watch them as an adult, you're like, oh man, that seems pretty inappropriate. And of course, you think back to when we were kids. For me, it was the 90s to early 2000s is kind of when I was cognizant. And I don't know what it was for the rest of you guys, but if you think about the culture back then, like you were allowed to get away with kind of less political correct stuff than you are now, and that's a whole different conversation, and we can have that if you want. But essentially, like watching, and somebody else brought this up recently, I don't remember what it was, but reading books and watching stuff at different stages in your life, the text and the movie is the same unless they've re-edited it. But your perspective is what has changed. So you read differently, and you absorb different things every time, and that is one of the great things about art to me. And I don't know if it's the same way with paintings and stuff like that, because I'm not super into that kind of stuff, but definitely with narrative storytelling, no matter what medium, and I imagine it has to be the same for an audiobook. If you read, listen, or watch at different points in your life, you are going to experience that same piece of art differently. And so that's people talk about reading and being kind of magical. That's another kind of magic I think that happens with books and movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you can experience it.
You get a different mind. I don't know if Troy, I'm curious. Like as a writer, I have a hard time enjoying books now because my editor, like my self-editing brain kicks in. And I'll hyperfixate on, would my editor have made me take out that one word? And I just struggle to enjoy it. I wonder, like, has anything changed since you've become a narrator? Like, do you read differently in your own head, or? I'm curious.
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think that, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, it's difficult. I remember when I in another life, I worked in radio, and
makes sense.
And I remember that, like, when I started doing commercials, I couldn't listen to the radio anymore because like I would like second guess the way that somebody else did something, and I'd say, oh, I would have read that differently. And so I can understand what you're saying, but the funny thing is, like, when I read, like, the stuff I read for pleasure is different than the stuff that I read for my, just like, I'm, in my audiobooks are like, I'm a Navy SEAL, or I'm the biker boss, or I'm the mercenary, or something along those lines. There's a type for me. But when I'm reading for pleasure, I'm reading like George Washington's biography or Thomas Paine, or
That makes sense.
like nonfiction stuff that's like to
So you're not
anybody
hearing
else.
like a sexy voice in your head when you're reading those lines?
I would say it like this.
I mean, hey, Martha Washington. I
Oh
mean, hey.
yeah, Ben Franklin. Yeah.
How about
But
you, Jay? How has your reading experience changed now that you're a writer?
So I used to read probably a book a day or a book every couple of days until I started writing in the beginning of this year, and then I haven't read anything. And my favorite author right now, whose name is Bruce Centaur, and he does like guy romance, more geared towards men. But they're all, the writing's all really good.
are you talking about? So when you say guy, do you mean like romantic male on
No,
male?
it's four guys. Like it's usually it's like harem or those types of things.
Gotcha.
But he writes it more, I think, geared towards men. It's like men's romance, I think.
Okay.
But I started reading. He puts out like a book every 2 months, like 3 months, maybe even soon. I don't even know how he does it. So I had 3 books to catch up on. He's got 7 books in 3 or 4 different series I think he's on right now. So as I was reading it last night, I was going, oh, look, he does exactly what I do. He just used this word twice in the same paragraph. I'm not the only one.
Every author has echoes.
So that's how I'm like reading the book now. I'm like, I can't even enjoy this anymore. I'm just looking for like the same type of errors and mistakes that I make. So I feel better about my writing.
Hey, let me ask you a quick question, since we're on the subject of your author Centaur. When you say that he writes romance for guys, that's a brand new thing for me. Like, so
it's new.
Apparently, is what Tanya's saying. Menrotica is a good word.
Yeah, it's something I haven't come across before, and he has 3 different series, and I like all of them. But it's a harem, so it's him finding, but it's usually a part of the story. There's usually some reason why he needs 12 different women that fits into the story. But they're all really.
I mean, I think about this like every time, whenever I read books, I would say I can't think of a single romance book that I've read that has not been written by a female author. And some female authors are better than others at writing romance with a male point of view. But for the most part, when I'm reading a romance book, I understand that the characters that these authors are writing are the female ideal of the man.
Well, and so you say romance, that is such a huge umbrella nowadays, right? And so there are so many different subgenres. It's like whenever I say I write crime fiction, well, you can parse that down. I've written 1 that's an action thriller, and then I have 3 that, if you really break it down, are rural Texas noir. Like, you can get that specific with it. So I definitely think the more clean versions of romance are where a lot of the male authors probably live. And then the spicier the romance, is probably what you're thinking of, where it's, mostly women. Now, obviously, Jay, he has a pretty spicy,
I tried to go in the
romance.
middle.
Yeah. And so
I took Bruce Centaur, and then I took regular romance, and I tried to write one from a male's perspective that a woman would enjoy reading, that's more sweet with spicy scenes. Then I feel like I can't write like women. Some of the women that I've been in some book clubs, I did a Facebook promo thing like last week, and a lot of them did a lot of those authors had much more spicy stalker fetish. Here's my stalker fetish book. And I'm just like, I can't, that's just not something I could write. It's just not in me.
I think the spicier and darker it gets, the more the division is evident between male and female audience and authors. For me, under this pen name, I only write Fade to Black. I actually am writing right now, rather spicy in a different pen name, but generally I prefer Fade to Black. And for me, I think that is a better meeting ground, like someone said, because like there's only so many times I want to hear about like his chiseled abs and perfectly cut. Just
I don't have any
tell
of
me
that.
like he's not a complete a-hole, because I mean I like Cinnamon. I'm in the minority apparently on BookTok,
Well,
but
yeah, it seems like the things that really sell are, the ones, where there has to be a certain amount of spice and, scenes that are, that are really hot in these books. And it's like you said, it seems to me like things are becoming much more granular in terms of the interests that people will read. So there are, very, and because I read them all. I mean, I read non-con and dubious con, and I read reverse harem, and I read
now when you say read, you're talking about for
narrating.
narrating?
Yeah, narrating. So I
Yes.
guess
Not for
the point.
funsies.
Yeah, the point is that
I mean, hey, we don't judge here. We don't judge on BookTalk.
They're yeah.
No,
Well,
it's just because he had mentioned, George Washington,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah,
wait
yeah,
a minute,
yeah.
right? He's talking about
right.
Right.
Well, so let me tell you something. I have learned some things about some of our historical characters, which are really fascinating. That are even more fascinating than the erotica that I've read in fiction. So, like, there's some really interesting stuff. George Washington, when before he married Martha Custis, uh, there are records of him ordering Spanish fly from his connection in London. So there's like there are shipping bills that include the one item, the order of Spanish fly. So you guys know what Spanish fly is, right?
No, I was just going to ask, what is
Oh,
no?
so okay,
Prostitute from Spain would be my guess.
I was gonna ask. It was my guess. I just wanted. I didn't want to say it.
aphrodisiac. It's an aphrodisiac.
Oh.
Okay.
It's an old time aphrodisiac, like ground up rhinoceros horn and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Well, this
yeah.
was
Okay.
ground up fly from Spain that you would sprinkle in your woman's tea or something in order to make her
Woman's tea. I like that.
interest. In order to make her interested, and so George Washington, there's record of him ordering this Spanish fly, this aphrodisiac, right before he marries Martha Custis. And Martha Custis, if you ever see pictures, if you ever see like portraits of her, she's very, very, a very dowdy kind of she's like everybody's grandmother. And so now he also had a possible torrid romance with Sally Fairfax, who was the wife of one of his sponsors, Lord Fairfax, where Fairfax, Virginia comes from. Anyway, so I don't know why I'm getting off on this tangent, but what I'm saying is like the sex stuff that like we know of there's some pretty juicy stuff. But back to the original thing, the the interests in these different taboos for female readers are very, very, very specific. There are women who have a desire for what they call bully romance, and that's like this chemistry where it's like a love hate kind of a thing between the girl and the guy. And and then there's like dubious consent, and then there's BDSM, and then there's pain and reverse harem and things like that. And which is fine, because it's just we all have our thing. It's like whatever like gets us going. But it's occurred to me that that's the same thing for guys. Like guys, I think that there is a space for, guys would like to read, and it doesn't even, I'm not even talking about the sex. I'm talking about like the romance.
That's what I
I
try to
think
put.
that guys
I like
would,
it.
yeah, guys want to read romance that is written for them, and it's not about, so, I think that women, there are a lot of female viewers or female readers who, they love that ideal, the chiseled abs, the alpha personality, the, this and that. But, guys are different. Like, we're,
Mm-hmm.
when I think about my ideal woman, I'm not necessarily thinking about like the beach body. I'm thinking about women who are, you know, pleasing and soft and
Mhm.
comforting and loving, and the things that guys feel are the ideals are not necessarily what women would think are the ideal. And
Mm-hmm.
so we we should have representatives who are writing for us, and it sounds like that's what Jay's doing.
I'm trying to do both. I said
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bruce Centaur. Bruce Centaur is. I mean, if you're a woman who is okay with harems,
Mhm.
I think you would like him a lot because all of his female characters are super strong and powerful, and they all have their own thing that they're really good at that brings,
Mhm.
something to the team of, him and his growing team of women.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I can't do it. Like, I'm not a harem-y person, so I couldn't write that. So I tried to write, like I said, a single story that I think from a guy's perspective that a guy would like to read, but also for women to see what it's like for a nice guy who likes who likes
well,
Yeah.
romance.
and
You know,
one of the great things that independent publishing has done for the romance genre is it is enabled people to get down to that granular level that you were talking about. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with Jodie Thomas. She's kind of an old
heard the name.
school. She's
Mhm.
like an old school romance writer, right? She lives here in Amarillo, so we're friends, and we kind of cross paths a lot. And I was in a ooh,
I like
that's kind of
that.
a
That's
cool one,
cool.
Nice.
yeah.
Yes, that's pretty
Panther
cool.
paws. All right.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
But anyway, so we were in a critique group, and we were talking one day. She had a public, and she's making it like that. Like she gets 6-figure book deals and stuff. Like totally wonderful. I am in awe of her, even though I don't write romance. And a Publishers Weekly review came out and had her under women's fiction, and so some of us were like, "That's weird. I thought you were romance." She's like, "I write what I write." And they tell me what category it's kind of in, and
Mm-hmm.
so and that's how it's at the bigger level they're trying to figure out where to categorize these different romance writers now, because there has been such a diverse groundswell of indie writers that have come in and really filled those gaps, because she
Mm-hmm.
was, when she started, she's writing the same kind of stuff she ever has, and if you go
Mm-hmm.
back and look at her books, they all have the same themes and they're all kind of doing the same thing. And so she started out, she was definitely romance, and then it became sweet romance, and then it became clean romance, and now it's women's
Mm-hmm.
fiction. And it's interesting. She says, "Yeah, there's sex in my books. I don't get into graphic detail because that's just not my voice. That's not how I write." And she had
Mm-hmm.
people, whenever she started being called clean romance. There were some readers who, and it wasn't her fault. It was people marketing her books who felt offended because they're like, "Oh, there was sex in your book." She's like, "Well, yeah, there's sex in real life. Like, of course, my
Hmm.
characters are going to have
Yeah.
their adult people. Of course, they're going to have sex." And so, that was kind of the reverse of what y'all are talking about, where people were like, "I want something clean," and you told me she was clean, but she had sex in her books. And Jodie was like, "I write what I write," and they put it where they put it, and
Yeah.
that's how
Mm-hmm.
that kind
I
of
mean,
works.
that's a downfall of, I think, especially of traditional publishing, is they don't necessarily go with very genuine categories. I mean, it's like
Mm-hmm.
A Court of Silver Flames has multiple sex scenes, and
Mm-hmm.
it is in the young adult section. It's it's graphic and it's full of it. It's like a major part of the plot, and we're just like, young adult is for teenagers. Why is this shelved in there?
Mm-hmm.
And even on Goodreads right now, some of the like voting, I guess that's probably over, isn't it? But like some of the categories in the young adult, it's just like, why is this here? But I think it is a wild time, just like, Troy can now do narrating and us indie folks, and we're all trying to navigate it. And,
They put my book as erotica.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I had to
Wow.
write them an email and be like, it's got 2 sex scenes. I don't know if it's erotica.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I wouldn't want to be misclassified so much in that way, especially because they can restrict, who
Yeah,
sees
they
your things.
did.
Exactly.
Well, you know,
But I think it's cool to experiment with, since we have so much variety that we can experiment with different readers. Like the next 3 books in my Cedar Wars series will actually be male POVs, whereas the first 5 have all been female, and so I'm like, hopefully I can do it justice, because there's a lot of romance along with, the magic and the political assassinations and whatnot. But I will say one encouraging thing. I'm gonna brag. My parents haven't read all my books, but they've read some of them. And my little novelette, that's a fairy tale retelling. It's from, again, the female perspective. But I wrote like some bonus scenes that people in my newsletter can get from the male perspective. And my parents don't read generally, but definitely not romance. And my dad was like, I really liked the way you did his perspective, because I always try to like add mutual respect. It's not about the ogling from either side. They're both well developed. They both have their motivations and insecurities and struggles. And I was just like, yay, maybe there's hope for me to write something that men and women like.
How are you doing with that? That's my story. The Ocean's Edge is like what Rick was talking about, where it's the main character who's Alex, but then every other story is going to be the different love story of other people introduced in the story. And so my next one is from a female perspective, and that'll be my first book from a female perspective. So how are you? Have you started that one yet from the males? How is that going?
I have. It's kind of been put on the back burner while I've worked on other projects, because I'm intimidated. It's going to be the largest book in the entire series. So I'm just like,
Gotcha.
Well over 500 pages, but it's hard to say. I think I already intimately know this character, just because he's actually the love interest from one of the main characters in the trilogy. But now we're getting his perspectives. So it's kind of like I already know his character.
It's the same for me. So I was just curious. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could if you could magically swap bodies with somebody? Like if you could like spend some time in the body of a girl, and vice versa. Like you could spend some time in the body of a man, and just like experience life as they are for a little while, just so, because I feel like it's it's a challenge. I mean,
either one, man.
Honestly, this app has helped a lot. I'm gonna say, just like you get random stuff, not just book stuff on your FYP. And I hear so many experiences from like, minorities, other groups, men, women, and struggles that they go through. And I don't know, it kind of helps me get to understand people better. And I think that's as close as I'm getting. I don't know that I actually ever want to body swap.
Well, how about you, Jay? What sort of things help you, write the women that are in your story? Because obviously, romance is touchy. I write crime fiction, so I just, and actually, I had a woman lead in Divided States, and I haven't gotten any complaints about it. And people ask me, and it's like I just, write them as a human being, and then whenever the parts that would come up that would be gender specific. I talk to women about those specific things. I have them as my beta readers, and I make sure that I try to get things as right as possible. But what sort of things do you do, Jay, to make sure that you try to get characters of the opposite sex correct?
My wife, I make her read it and let me know what she thinks. But I do the same thing. I try to think, person first. And then if, her being a woman or him being a man has anything to do with the actual story, then I put it in there. Like for Ocean's Edge, Namera is a mermaid, and the mermaids in the story, every 5 years or so, they grow legs and they go on land, and it's called the Amantis, and it's their lover's journey, and that's how they reproduce. And so I have to take, my wife being a woman, and then also, what her perspective, and then now her perspective as a mermaid doing these things that she normally does, and try to write it. So it's tough. But that's how I got her on land. Was that the mermaids grow legs, and then they find a man, they make a baby, and then they go back in the ocean and they have mermaid babies, female, and they're always female, and that's just kind of their incentive to reproduce.
These guys, that would be like the luckiest day of their life, and then it would be like.
Yeah. Well, that was the negative. The negative is, the main bad guy is when it went wrong, and then she and so that's kind of how that happened. So yeah, it should be the luckiest day for a guy to get a random mermaid. But
there's a good question from Book Reader Anonymous. How do the mermaids procreate in your world?
Yeah, so that's what they do. Yeah, they it's called the Amantis, and every 3 to 5 years their tails start turning into legs, and then they come on land, they find a guy, they do the deed, and then they go back, hopefully pregnant, and then they have a baby, and then they raise it, and then the process continues. They run all the trade for the supernatural world, the sea trade, because there's a bunch of ocean monsters, and they kind of fight them and make sure the trade and stuff goes through, and that's kind of what the mermaids do.
I'm imagining this scene like 25 years later, this old grizzled guy sitting in a tavern.
Just waiting.
This guy in a tavern, he's like, there was this wobbly-haired girl who I found at the beach.
Yeah.
Greatest night of my life.
She came up naked as can be, her body shining in the moonlight.
walking like she just learned to walk. And then she disappeared, but man, I still think about that girl.
That's the bad guy, is that happened, and then it went bad, and then he became obsessed, and then got with another bad person, and then he became obsessed with her and finding her. So that's kind of. So you're actually you thought you were right there on the story.
Wow. Yeah, all I need is like 100,000 words, and I could write a story too.
Mm-hmm.
But. I think about these stories, and I think that's the difference between like somebody like me and an actual writer, is like I think about all these stories and I think, wow, what if like somebody evil found them. So I had an idea about Noah, how Noah and his daughters get on the ark, and the rest of the story. But what you didn't know is that the evil king of Babylon or Peloponnesia or wherever they that happened got to the daughter, and she was pregnant, and so Noah. I don't know if you know the biblical story of Noah, but his daughters actually had sex with him after they landed, so that they could begin the human race again. So that's
makes sense.
That's kind of weird. And speaking of genre fiction, but my theory was, okay, so this obviously God said, okay, well, for this one time, I'll give you a free pass to do incest with your daughter. But the other daughter had already been despoiled by this evil king, who is now dead. But there are two babies born. One baby is the baby of Noah. The other baby is the baby born of this evil coupling, which is so these two families go their separate ways. One is evil, one is good, and that is the story of good and evil as it plays out through the rest of history. So all I need is 100,000 words.
That's all you got to do. Just start writing, you'll get it.
Yeah. So I keep thinking of these stories in my head, but
that's what you got to do.
You just got to start writing.
We get a lot of inspiration from history.
Yeah, I've got a brown napkin on my computer desk that's got a bunch of ideas that me and my wife came up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so one thing to touch on, you're talking about writers versus you just need 100,000 words. When people like you come to me and say like, hey, I have ideas, but I don't know how to write. And so the frustrating answer that we all give is you just have to sit down and just start typing words. And some days it's just typing. Man, I really this day really sucks. I can't think of anything to write. And if you're typing that, eventually your brain will come back to an idea that's related to what it is that you're trying to do. The trick is to remember to delete that other crapola before you send it to an editor or something. And
Right.
we definitely have. I've heard stories of writers like, yeah, I forgot I had that in there, and then so my beta readers were going like, hey, so I can just ignore these 5 paragraphs where you're talking about how being a writer is awful and why am I even doing this, right? Like that has nothing to do with your story.
Hmm.
But like that, a lot of times that really is just you just have to type words and you get
Hmm.
going. And some people are like, I don't even have an idea. I just know that I want to write something. And if they don't even have a subject,
Hmm.
I tell them, well, start, and just write your inner monologue. What are you thinking about right then as you're starting to type?
Hmm.
And your brain, that's the magic of writing a little bit, is your brain will figure out what you're trying to say. It'll try to
Hmm.
get your message out. It may be an essay, about a
Hmm.
topic you're really passionate about. It may be a story, and you may start, start with your story of
Hmm.
Noah, and then all of a sudden you're in the mind of one of the daughters. You're in the mind of
Hmm.
and you're just it'll happen. And somebody talked earlier. It was either in the comments or one of you guys. I can't remember about characters actually talking to you while you're writing. And I have had that experience where
Hmm.
I was writing Let the Guilty Pay, and I had 2 timelines, and I had a character that was in the past timeline who was not in the present timeline until she basically, held me by the lapels and, turned to me and said, hey, you know who I am, right? And then all of a sudden my brain, oh, I am actually, this is the younger version of this other character in the present that I'd already written. And it wasn't
Interesting.
until the character told me that they were the same people. And then
Hmm.
that really, the whole third act of my book was a lot different and a lot better based on the feedback I've gotten for having that happen.
Wow.
So that sort of thing
Yeah.
really happens. For Jay and Jen, have either of you had that moment where your characters sat you down and explained to you who they were and what they were doing, as opposed to you, the real person in the real world, really writing, telling them what they should be doing?
You go, Jen.
For the most part, they're their own people. I don't control much.
Hmm.
I have to reel them in sometimes, be like, hey, let's not slit too many throats. Like, we're getting darker than I want for the story.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they are definitely, they all have little bits of my trauma and my experiences and my hobbies and yeah, they do their own things.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, same here. I mean, they're all of them are a bit of me or somebody that I know. I always try to make my characters, especially the main characters, better people than me because why
Hmm.
not?
Yeah, what you aspire to, right? Or like how
Yeah,
you would like to, how you would like to handle things.
Yeah.
but I
I've
get
always thought
really
to myself, like,
into them.
when I die, I would like to die well. And I mean, I'll probably die on the toilet or something really glamorous or something. But I would like to think that, like, if I break up a fight at a gas station, or if somebody's accosting somebody else, and I maybe that would be the way that I would like to die. But we don't know how it's going to go. But if I could write my own script, that's what I would write.
I mean, that's what, yeah. I mean, I get really into my characters. I mean, I remember there's a big death scene at the end of my book, and my wife came in and she's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "She died." Crying.
Oh,
She's like,
I cry
"What?"
so much.
And
Oh, yeah.
she didn't get it at all. And I'm like, "You don't understand." And then even when I was editing it, I've already know the scene. I'd still tear up
Every
because I'm like,
time.
this is such a big
Yeah.
character. All of these people are real because they're real in my head that I came up with. So
And
hopes and dreams.
yeah, well, I tell writers too that if you're writing an emotional, a scene that's supposed to be emotional, and you are not having a physiological reaction, if you are writing a chase scene or some big climactic, thing in one of my thrillers, and my heart's not going a little bit, and I'm not sitting over there really typing on the computer super focused, then I know that I haven't reached down deep enough within my own emotions and have
Mhm.
them get out on the page. Same thing if it's supposed to be, I do have a few romantic scenes in some of my books, and yeah, if I'm not sitting there, if I don't have that that pit right there, in the sternum, where there's that excitement and but also the fear of maybe kissing a person for the first time or telling them how you feel. If I'm not feeling that, then I am not going to be able to get that out of my reader whenever they are reading it.
Yeah,
And
that's right. If you feel it, they should feel it,
exactly.
Or at least if you don't feel it, they're definitely not going to feel it.
You need that strong interiority. Tanya told me that I needed to record myself because I told her I'm very expressive. Like, I'm going to cry when my characters cry or when there's a death. I'm also going to be scowling when there is an argument. Or doing like a stupid love face when there's like a cute thing, and I'm just like, I look like a fool.
You do have an expressive face. I will say that. So we've been going
it's not
for about
a bad
an hour
thing.
and a half. And I don't know. I know that some people have to get to bed, and wake up early and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a cough. I've been trying to hold it back.
Yeah.
Starting.
And an hour and a half is about whenever we like to to have these things go. So I want to give everybody go around quickly and let us know where we can find you and your books other than here on TikTok. And by the way, if you're watching and you're not following all four of us, this is your chance to go ahead and do that right now. So let's start with Jen.
With me?
Yeah.
So my social media, other than obviously right here until tomorrow, everywhere I'm on J Hauser Writes. I have a YouTube channel, I think, and Instagram that are kind of my second most common, but my website, jhauserwrites.com. I have like affiliate links for my books and everything. You can see everything.
And I'm on here pretty much most of the time. jmichaelknight.com. I have a web developer that's doing it right now. It should be up by the beginning of January next year, just like most of the things, like my audiobook and everything. But pretty much here, I have a link tree in my bio. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, but really, I like Rick said, I like the TikTok community, so I spend most of my time here.
Yeah. TikTok is, I think I had a handle on TikTok called Screaming Lord Fancy Pants, and I thought that was pretty cool. But apparently,
I would have followed you. See, I get that weird. That's perfect.
According to the TikTok experts, that's probably not the best handle for me. So I think I'm like Troy Duran, audiobook narrator now. But you can get me at Troy Duran on Twitter, and then Troy Duran audiobook narrator on Facebook. So, and then of course, like if you want to buy the audiobooks, just do a search on Audible, and you got me all over the place.
Awesome.
And I am on here, obviously, and this is where I am for the most part now. I'm like Jay, like that. But if you go to ricktreon.com, I have it set up. It basically looks like a link tree because I figured most people are coming to my website through things like this. So, and I have my own domain. But from there, you can see my other socials, and you can, have links to find my books on Amazon. I also, I need to check one of my links, so I'm not going to point you there because I'm not sure if we're still there. We have audio course or video courses that are kind of like masterclass, and I've done a couple of those through Book Puma online. It looks like Troy fell out.
He did the purge.
All right. Well, anyway, that's where you can find me, ricktreon.com, and the link is in my profile, and you can find all my stuff there. But I guess we'll thank Troy, and we'll thank Jay and Jen. Thank you so much for coming on, especially Jen. I know you were a late addition.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, and like I said, Allie, we're going to reschedule her, but you did, this was a fantastic night tonight. And thank all of you.
It was nice to get to know others.
It was because of her.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, yeah, it was a good night because she joined. Yeah.
Well, and those very, facial expressions, they lit up our night. And they really did. We had a great time, and I know that you had to drop out late before, so I'm glad that you got to have a full sitting with us here on BookTalk. And thanks to everybody who liked, who followed, who were very generous with their gifts. We enjoyed it all. And we're going to wrap this up, and we'll see you next week, Wednesdays at 7 p.m.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Rick.
Sounds like a plan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.